On the day of my delivery, I was alone and on my way to the hospital when I got trapped in the elevator. My husband, a firefighter, went to rescue his suicidal, depressed white moonlight Isla. I looked at my phone but didn't call him for help. In my past life, because of my call for help, he abandoned Isla, who was about to jump, to save me. In the end, my child and I were safe, but Isla fell from the 18th floor and died. My husband's eyes were red, but he didn't blame me, saying that from then on he only wanted to be a good father to our child. He even discussed with me where to hold the baby's full moon celebration. But on the day of the full moon, he personally threw our child to death, and then tortured me to death. Being trapped in the elevator, you can always get out after waiting. But what about Isla? Who will return my Isla to me? Isla is gone. I want you and your bastard to go down and atone for her. When I opened my eyes again, I was back to the moment when the elevator malfunctioned. After a jolt, the elevator stopped. Before I could react, I instinctively grabbed the handrail to steady myself from the shaking. After a moment, the elevator stopped, and the floor display was stuck halfway, flickering before going completely dark. My face turned pale. I didn't expect to be reborn to this moment. Without hesitation, my hand quickly pressed all the floor buttons, and then repeatedly pressed the emergency call button. But the result was no different from the last life. After some noise, there was still no response from the other end. I closed my eyes in despair. My husband, Nolan, and I had just moved into this new, sparsely populated residential complex a week ago. The property management company seemed to still be in the process of hiring staff. Many services were inadequate, to the point that no one even noticed that the elevator's emergency call button didn't work. At the same time in my past life, I should have already called my husband, and was waiting for him to come with the fire department to rescue me. But this time, I could only rely on myself. I clenched my fists, cautiously placed the large delivery bag I was carrying on the ground, and slowly moved to the corner of the elevator to sit down with difficulty. The elevator shook a couple of times but didn't move. Cold sweat broke out on my forehead due to the intense anxiety, and my fingers trembled as I took out my phone. The 119 line connected quickly. I cleared my throat and had just reported my situation and location when the person on the other end, Ed, is there a problem? I tried my best to remain calm, but the despair of being trapped in the elevator was rapidly devouring my sanity. Just then the other person's originally serious tone changed. Sister-in-law, stop pretending. The next time you try to trick someone, at least change the address. I was about to explain when I heard him chuckle. You're almost 30, don't you know not to waste public resources? Even if you want to ask about Nolan's whereabouts, you shouldn't use the 119 line as your toy. As he spoke, my abdomen twinged, and a rush of heat flowed out from below. It was amniotic fluid. I clutched my stomach in fear, afraid something would happen to the baby, and my voice as I spoke again was tinged with tears. No, I'm really trapped in the elevator, I can't get out, and my water broke. I beg you please. Sister-in-law, stop pretending, okay? Nolan told us you aren't due until next month. He's out on a mission now. Even if you make a fuss, he can't abandon other people's lives to come and play house with you. We're all adults here. You should be considerate of Nolan. Do you know that your incessant phone calls could end up killing another life? The fire department's phone line is not a joke. As a firefighter's family member, you should know that. If you call again, don't blame me for being impolite. His tone grew increasingly sharp, and he hung up the phone decisively. Even though I had repeatedly interrupted to beg him to send someone to check it out, he ignored me. Looking at the pitch-black phone screen, tears streamed down my face. For the 5 years I had been married to Nolan, I had never asked him to use his position for personal gain. I knew his profession was sacred and inviolable, so even though I was left alone in a dark home countless times during family reunions, I had never complained. At most, I had only called him and thrown a tantrum when he was looking for Isla. But in the mouths of his colleagues, I had become a jealous woman who wasted public resources. I was too insensitive in my past life, so it wasn't until I was reborn that I realized what kind of image I had in his heart. No wonder I had such an ending in my past life. A sense of sorrow filled my heart, and my stiffening abdomen twinged again. The baby was about to be born. I couldn't care less about the past anymore, and I called my husband's phone again. Nolan, You're not going to say you're trapped in the elevator, are you? What? You couldn't get through to the fire station, so you're calling me? If Cole hadn't just called me, I might have actually believed you. Audrey, I'm telling you, don't joke with me about the baby at a time like this. He laughed mockingly. And then the phone was hung up again. Hearing his mocking voice, my heart ached, and a rush of heat flowed out from below. I looked down at the pool of liquid beneath me, and the fear in my heart grew stronger and stronger. The doctor had said during my prenatal checkup that without amniotic fluid, the baby was highly likely to experience intrauterine distress, even death. The only way to deal with premature rupture of membranes was to lie flat and elevate the hips. I bit my lip, ignoring the tears rolling down my cheeks, and moved down little by little, trying my best to lie down in the cramped elevator with as little movement as possible. But perhaps because I was too heavy, just as I was halfway lying down, my right arm suddenly cramped, causing me to lose my balance and crash heavily onto the elevator floor. The already unstable elevator shook even more violently, and then suddenly plummeted. A violent sense of weightlessness assaulted me, and I screamed, shouting for help. But no one could save me in the cramped elevator, not even the only light, which flickered and then went out completely. Perhaps heaven heard my cries, because the out-of-control elevator suddenly made a creaking sound, and then stopped abruptly. Under the force of the sudden braking, I, who had been lying on the floor, was thrown into the air and then crashed back to the ground. Instantly, my stomach, which had taken the brunt of the impact, began to ache. The baby inside me struggled restlessly, kicking my ribs, causing another burst of excruciating pain. Having temporarily escaped death, I couldn't stop trembling, but I still remembered to grab my phone and call for help. I gritted my teeth and opened WeChat through blurred, tear-filled eyes. To the property management. To my neighbors. To anyone in this community. I have a baby. I can't die here like this. But staring at the bright red exclamation point next to the help message I sent to the owners group, my gaze froze, and it took me a long time to register the no signal message in the phone's status bar. The sudden plunge had made the already weak signal even worse, cutting off almost all my chances of survival. Could it be that heaven really wants me and my baby to die here? But if that's the case, why let me be reborn? Clinging to the last shred of hope, I dialed 110, the Chinese emergency number. To my surprise, the call went through. Crying, I explained my situation to the police, but when they asked which floor I was on, I couldn't answer. Hearing this, the tone of the operator became heavier, but they still tried to calm me down, telling me not to be afraid and to protect myself. In the darkness, I nodded obediently, but cries of pain escaped me as the contractions grew stronger with each passing moment. The police officer on the other end immediately connected me with the relevant emergency medical personnel from 120, helping me adjust my breathing and stabilize my emotions. They even comforted me, saying that the baby was a sensible child, aware that its mother was afraid, so it was in a hurry to come out and protect me. I touched my aching, throbbing stomach, and my eyes were filled with nothing but tears. After more than 10 minutes, in the midst of complete silence, I vaguely heard someone calling my name. I immediately informed the operator, and then hung up as instructed. Soon, the police and paramedics pinpointed my location. Separated by a door, they kept trying to reassure me. Many residents and renovation workers who knew about the elevator accident also gathered around, offering suggestions. Judging from the sound, it's stuck between 2 floors. Is it inconvenient for you police to carry out the rescue? Don't be afraid, little sister inside. The police, doctors, and property management are here. Whatever you do, don't move around inside, stabilize the elevator, and wait patiently for rescue. Hang in there. Don't panic. There's a whole bunch of us out here trying to help you. Someone had even called 119, the Chinese fire department. Isn't this 119 sick in the head? I barely said the word elevator, and he said not to play along with the act. This is a matter of life and death. Who's putting on a show with him here? They actually dared to have that attitude. I'll call the mayor's hotline to complain as soon as she's rescued. If a firefighter has this kind of attitude, if there's an accident after we move into the new house, we'll be burned to death with no one to complain to. After this ordeal, I finally saw clearly what kind of beast I had married. Police officers and doctors, who are also public servants, would prioritize my life because of their duty, and strangers were willing to offer a helping hand. But only my husband, the man who once held my hand and made vows, coldly hung up on me, and even went to great lengths to prevent me from being rescued. He's not worthy of the title husband, let alone the firefighter's uniform he wears. The police officer called 119, identifying himself first before stating the location. I lay in the elevator listening, but all I heard was the police officer's angry voice. People's police are handling a case. Who has time to put on a show with you? I'm telling you, this illegal refusal to dispatch is a serious violation of China's fire protection law. If you dare to keep rambling on with me, don't blame me for bringing the team over to have a good talk with your fire system about how things are done. I've been a policeman for 20 years, and this is the first time I've encountered a lawless fire department like yours. I'm telling you, if you can't do the job, then get out. You're a firefighter to serve the people, not to put on airs and bully the people on the phone. Perhaps the police's stern warnings had worked, as I trembled all over from the labor contractions in the darkness, but I still heard someone outside the elevator shouting that firefighters had arrived with tools. Why is only one of you here? I think there's a big problem with your fire station. After waiting for more than 10 minutes, only one person has come. Don't you value human life? Everyone else in our team is out on a mission. I'm the only one. Even through the elevator door I could hear. The person who came was the same firefighter who answered the phone earlier. Even now his tone was still completely nonchalant. A few minutes later, a crack was finally pried open in the tightly closed elevator doors. Looking up, I realized I was stuck between two floors. The firefighter who had confidently said I was faking it earlier looked at the mess inside the elevator, his face pale as paper. It's not that, ma'am. I didn't know you were really going into labor. You wait, I can get you out in 15 more minutes. Someone nearby realized something was wrong and, after questioning him closely, learned that my husband was their fire captain. Immediately, the people outside the elevator began to discuss it. Many were even scolding Nolan on my behalf. Because of the shortage of firefighters, they could only have the police officers, strong building owners, and workers manually crank the elevator, slowly lowering the car to the door zone. Nearly an hour passed from the time I made the first call, until I was rescued. And the baby in my belly hadn't moved in a long time. After being put on a gurney, I grabbed the doctor's wrist, my voice filled with blood and tears. My baby hasn't moved in a long time. Amid the noise, the phone in my hand finally got a signal, and the soothing piano music began to play. It was the exclusive ringtone I had set for Nolan. I picked up numbly, only to hear his head-on questioning. Hearing his voice again, my heart couldn't help but clench. The despair I felt the moment he hung up the phone several tens of minutes ago still lingered in my mind. Audrey, aren't you shameless? You can make a fuss in front of me, but you even dared to call the police. I told you I was on a mission. Can't you understand? I'm telling you, I'm already very busy every day. If you cause trouble today and someone from above comes to inspect, don't blame me for being ruthless. His impatient voice echoed in my ears, mixed with several unpleasant insults. I didn't dodge, just listened quietly, forcing myself to see the true face of this man now. It was laughable, I thought. Before, I thought his killing me in the previous life was only to avenge his white moonlight, Isla. But after this phone call, I finally understood. No. The problem was never Isla. It was Nolan. It was that he not only no longer loved me, but even loathed me so much. Perhaps he was cursing too badly, so much so that even the team members who had been on his side earlier could no longer listen, and directly snatched the phone from my hand. Nolan, this is Cole. Your wife is really in trouble. If you can get away, hurry up and come to the Provincial Maternal and Child Health Hospital. But all he got was Nolan's harsher scolding. Cole? Who allowed you to leave your post and dispatch at will? Did I ever say not to answer any calls from Audrey? You get back on duty immediately and submit a 1,500-word self-criticism tomorrow. Isla has just been rescued on my end, and I'm busy providing reassurance. Warn Audrey not to call again. Another wave of sharp pain hit my abdomen. The doctor put away the fetal heart monitor, his face serious. There's too little amniotic fluid in the uterus, and the birth canal is too dilated. We can't wait to get to the hospital. Your baby is in a transverse position. Next, I may have to manually correct the position. Let's breathe properly, mom-to-be, and endure it for the sake of the baby. What? Before I could ask what that meant, the ambulance doors closed, and the doctor's entire forearm was already inside my abdomen. Without even half an anesthetic, on the speeding ambulance, the doctor forcefully twisted the baby in my stomach around. As overwhelming pain struck, I remembered the past soaked in blood in the previous life. In the previous life, at the first moment the accident happened, I called Nolan for help, crying and telling him that my water had already broken, and that I was trapped in the elevator. He arrived with people in a few minutes, spent more than 10 minutes rescuing me, and took me directly to the hospital. In the end, he held my hand in the delivery room, and helped me give birth to this child. And Isla, who was standing on the roof at the time, didn't trust the firefighters present and cried and insisted that Nolan appear when she accidentally stepped into the air and fell from the 18th floor. After we left the delivery room, Nolan, upon hearing the devastating news, didn't say a word. He went to handle her funeral arrangements first. He didn't appear before me again until the day I was discharged from the hospital. Afraid he couldn't handle it, I told him to go and rest properly. But he gently took my hand and said he had already missed the first 3 days of the baby's life, and didn't want to miss another step in his. Looking at his swollen but honest eyes, I simply assumed he had accepted the reality of Isla's passing. Even when he meticulously prepared the full-month celebration for the baby, I felt the long-lost affection between us. But on the day of the full-month celebration, Nolan, who should have appeared with me, instead bound my limbs. His face was deranged, and the look in his eyes towards the child was that of a demon. Don't you like to steal from me? Why don't you steal now? Damn it, I didn't go back because of this cursed spawn? Were you planning to use the child to hold me back while she was having an attack all along? Isla's death. I'll make this little bastard you bore taste it properly. He shouted about avenging Isla, his scarlet eyes fixed on me, pinching my face to make me see how he would smash to death the child I carried for 10 months. Audrey, I should have known. I should have known that being trapped in the elevator was just your excuse. How could being trapped in an elevator cause a death? Do you know how many times Isla cried out my name before she died? It was you. You killed her. He glared at me venomously, the dagger in his hand ruthlessly slicing my flesh piece by piece. From the outside in, from top to bottom. Dipping into fresh blood time and time again. I screamed in pain, begged for mercy, even cursed, but I couldn't stop his 3-hour-long torture. The moment before I breathed my last, I saw him tremblingly take out a photo frame. Inside was Isla smiling brightly. Isla, look, I avenged you. I watched as, after my death, he dragged Isla's urn from under the bed, put on a suit he had rented some time ago, and walked triumphantly into the banquet originally held for my son's full-month celebration. And amidst everyone's horrified gaze, he brazenly held a wedding that belonged to him and Isla. Outside of the memory, the pain of contractions came and went, tears streaming down my face. I screamed shrilly. This time, unlike the floor covered in blood in my previous life, this time, the scream and pain represented the birth of a new life. I gasped violently, but noticed the doctor's face was devoid of joy. The child. My child. Why wasn't he crying? My eyes widened, my chapped lips only managing to utter the words baby. The ambulance finally stopped, and a flurry of white figures rushed into the ambulance, separating me from the newborn baby. The only thing I could hear was a doctor's anxious voice. Notify neonatal ICU for newborn resuscitation. Looking at the baby who was covered in purple, I was filled with remorse. Only now did I understand I was wrong. Wrong from the very beginning. From the moment he received Isla's emergency call at our wedding and abandoned me without a word, telling me he had an assignment. I should have known. This marriage, born in error and maintained in error, should have ended long ago. It was only my stubbornness and love that led to such a tragic ending, that made my child pay the price for my stupidity for 2 lifetimes. After I finished all the examinations and was pushed back to the ward, there was still no news about the baby. Instead, the female police officer who had been with me during the rescue was still by my side, comforting me that no news was the best news. To distract me, She shared news on her phone with me, and suddenly exclaimed, "Miss Audrey, you're trending on Weibo." I looked up and saw the trending topic, a city pregnant woman trapped in elevator, fire department refuses to dispatch multiple times. It's good that it's a big deal, then I'll see how your beastly husband continues to get away with it, the young policewoman said indignantly, even offering to introduce me to a divorce lawyer. As I listened to her reading netizens' comments in a half-hearted manner, I heard a commotion outside. Suddenly, the ward door was pushed open violently. Nolan strode in, and immediately roared at me. "Audrey, have you lost your mind? You still dare to spread rumors online? Do you know how much this will affect me, the credibility of our fire department? I'm telling you, I don't care how you made that fake video. If you don't delete it now and publicly apologize online admitting to spreading rumors, you can wait for the divorce." Looking at his deranged appearance, I smiled coldly. Then divorce. He didn't care about my answer, just looked at the hospital gown I was wearing and belatedly asked a question. "What are you doing in the hospital?" "What else would I be doing at the hospital?" I sneered, not even bothering to spare him another glance. "If I'm not here to see a doctor, am I here to try out the hospital beds?" He was stunned by my words, then as if remembering something, he strode to my bedside, ignoring the young policewoman's attempts to stop him, and brazenly yanked back the covers. I had just had a gynecological exam, and couldn't easily get out of bed. I was practically naked from the waist down. But Nolan completely disregarded my dignity, his intrusive gaze roughly scanning my belly. Yet my stomach was still round after giving birth, and unless I explained it, he wouldn't be able to tell that a fragile little life had been born into this chaotic world not long ago. Sure enough, as soon as he saw my belly, a look of understanding dawned on his face, followed by a question. "Your complexion is really well made up. How many pounds of powder did you put on?" As he spoke, he harshly pinched my chin with one hand, his eyes filled with threat. "Isla's condition isn't stable yet. I don't have time to deal with you right now. But you better take back all these acting tricks right now. If I see even a hint of slanderous rumors online again, I'll make sure you know what regret feels like." I looked at him calmly, not afraid at all. "Rumors? What rumors? What rumors are online?" "Pregnant woman trapped in elevator. Fire department repeatedly refuses to dispatch." I leisurely repeated the hot search topic I had glimpsed, my gaze towards Nolan now only filled with ice. "Nolan, Captain Lee, you tell me, which word in that sentence is a rumor?" Nolan's fingers tightened on my chin, but he couldn't utter a single word. I endured the pain, a faint smile playing on my lips. All bark and no bite. Our first meeting after my rebirth, Nolan was completely defeated. After my boundless love for him disappeared, I realized he was just a paper tiger, so easily broken. Stupid, rash, short-sighted, perhaps also arrogant and conceited. Full of flaws. And now, I only felt utter hatred for him. I hated him for torturing me to death in my past life. Even more, I hated him for plotting against my child in both lives. I raised my eyebrows, my expression changed, and I slapped him squarely across the face. Then, taking advantage of his surprise, I grabbed his thumb that was pinching my chin and bent it backwards. For a moment, I actually forced him to release his grip, and he took 2 steps back in disbelief. And the policewoman, who had seen the situation was bad and had gone out to call for help, rushed back into the ward with the old policeman who had rescued me. As soon as he entered the ward, he saw the scene of me slapping my husband, and immediately shouted sternly, "What kind of man are you? You can't even dodge a slap from your wife. It's disgusting to watch. No wonder you ignored your wife's call for help. I seriously suspect that today's incident was your attempt to murder your wife." Upon hearing this, Nolan retorted confidently, "What nonsense are you talking about? What proof do you have? What? Just because you're a police officer, you can spread rumors and slander others at will. You know that this society is all about evidence. I thought you didn't know since you're throwing around rumors and slander all the time. That online video, with witnesses and physical evidence, can't just be turned into rumors with a few words from you." Nolan scoffed. "A fake video from who knows where can be used as evidence in court? Whether it's a fake video or not isn't up to a villain like you to decide. What? Millions of people have watched the video online, and only you can tell it's fake. Only you have the brain to know you've been wronged. Besides you firefighters, are the police, prosecutors, and courts all just freeloaders? The old policeman pointed at Nolan's nose while scolding him, and casually threw his phone at him. I opened my own phone and saw that in the short time we had been arguing, the topic, which had been in the teens on the trending searches, had risen to the top. When I opened the topic, the first things that came up weren't marketing accounts, but several announcements from different official accounts with verified badges. I glanced at them, and saw that they were all accountability notices. At this point, Nolan finally panicked. He stared at the contents of the phone in disbelief, first looking at the serious official announcements, then clicking on the elevator's surveillance video. I looked particularly pathetic in the video, struggling for survival in the swaying elevator, but unable to withstand the contractions. When I collapsed to the ground, causing the elevator to plummet the first time, the sound of my terrified, desperate cries for help clearly came from the phone. It took a long time for those cries to finally reach the person who should have heard them the most. He watched me holding my belly with one hand, frantically making calls with the other, begging the person on the other end of the phone for a chance to live, and watched my face grow paler and paler as time passed. At the end of the video was a scream from me after being put on the ambulance. Nolan's expression changed repeatedly, and after a long daze, he finally looked up at me. He was no longer as arrogant as before, his voice carrying a hint of guilt and uncertainty. So, the child. Kid, you still have the nerve to ask about your wife and child? The old police officer snatched the phone from his hand, spitting on the ground first. Based on what you did today, whether that child lives or dies, they'll have nothing to do with you from now on. But Nolan wouldn't give up, staring intently at me, wanting an answer. Looking at him now, I sneered. What do you think? Do you think a child whose amniotic fluid has all leaked out can survive? What's wrong? Weren't you busy saving Isla? Using my son's flesh and blood to save her. You must have saved her, right? Hearing me mention Isla, his pupils instantly constricted, his trembling lips suddenly unable to say anything. Then he averted his eyes and lowered his head. He always used to act pitiful in front of me like this when he did something wrong. I used to laugh and say he looked like a poor, wet puppy. Looking back now, that was insulting to puppies. But I didn't let him off like I used to. Instead, I pinned him down with a knife-like gaze, forcing him to finally explain in a trembling voice. Audrey, I admit I was reckless today. I just habitually thought it wasn't a big deal. Otherwise I would have come to save you and the baby first. It's all my fault, don't blame Isla. I really wanted to laugh, so I coldly pressed him with 2 more questions. After saving me and the baby, then what? If it wasn't me and the baby who were in trouble today, but Isla, the apple of your eye, what would you have done? Nolan froze for a moment. That's not possible. I didn't say anything, just gently closed my eyes. How could it not be possible? I still remembered the hatred in his eyes when he held the dagger, and I remembered the heart-wrenching cries of the baby when he tossed him in the air. I remembered the tenderness in his trembling hands when he took out Isla's photo frame. And I remembered him walking into the wedding hall carrying her ashes. Every single detail, I remembered it all. He would avenge Isla with a vengeance, but to me, he could only offer a dry, that's not possible. 5 years of marriage ending up like this is a complete failure. Arrange a time to meet with me after you've dealt with things online. I looked up at him, my eyes devoid of joy or sorrow, only the final piece. Let's get a divorce. Nolan's expression changed. He was about to say something when the old police officer pushed him out, cursing as he shoved him out of the hospital room. You're so dense. What else can a big man like you do besides argue with the victim? Relying on your fists. Since you're so good with your words, turn left and give a good explanation to those reporters. What do you think you're doing, bullying a patient here? If you can't give the reporters and the public a satisfactory answer, you can forget about being a firefighter. Doing something like this, you're really disgracing the police force. Reporters who had been staking out the hospital from all directions, hearing the news, swarmed in, and a cacophony of sounds suddenly erupted. But at that moment, the young policewoman quickly closed the door, cutting off the chaos from the outside world, returning a moment of peace to me. I thought for a moment and tentatively got out of bed. Could you come with me later to take a look? Outside, the hospital's security guards and police officers escorted Nolan to the empty lobby and abandoned him in front of a pack of ravenous reporters. The reporters, who had been somewhat orderly, immediately became excited when they saw the firefighter uniform he was still wearing, and a dozen microphones of different sizes and standards were thrust into his face. Are you the firefighter responsible for the pregnant woman's district? Are the details described online true? Why did your fire station repeatedly refuse to dispatch? Is it due to the personal feelings as rumored online? We heard you're the pregnant woman's husband. Did you want to deliberately kill your wife and child by having your subordinates refuse to dispatch? Where were you as the captain of the fire brigade when the incident occurred? You. Amidst the chaos, the reporter's questions were sharper than the last. Nolan gradually panicked. After finally catching a simple question, he answered it offhandedly. I was taking my team on an emergency mission when the incident occurred. Is the emergency mission that's being spread online actually related to personal feelings? No. Isla and I are just ordinary friends. She had a depressive episode and wanted to jump off a building, so I took my men to dispatch. So, are you admitting that this dispatch was due to your personal reasons? Why would you dispatch almost the entire fire brigade for someone jumping off a building? The alarm center shows that your fire brigade did not receive any emergency calls before the incident. How did you know someone was jumping off a building? Is this a pre-planned excuse for trying to kill your wife? Nolan only answered 2 sentences, but the scene became even more out of control. The reporters frantically analyzed his words for any loopholes, eager to confirm his criminal behavior based on this sentence. He opened his mouth, but the explanation he was about to give was completely swallowed back in the chaotic scene. He could only retreat in panic. He shuddered when the small of his back hit the edge of the reception desk. He knew there was no escape. Just then his panicked, darting eyes suddenly stopped. Immediately afterward, he raised his hand and pointed towards the entrance, shouting in a broken voice, I don't know anything. It wasn't me who answered the phone and refused to send help. It was him. The frenzied reporters were stunned. Then, in an instant, the vast majority of them turned their cameras towards Cole, who had just walked into the hospital. But how could Cole be someone who would swallow his anger? He was already suffering undeservedly, having been cursed behind his back in the neighborhood. All the way here he hadn't dared to stand up straight, apologizing to everyone he met, saying, "This was our mistake, we'll definitely make improvements in the future." He'd been playing the pushover the whole way, and now that he'd finally arrived at the hospital, he was being stabbed in the back by his own superior. In a flash, he threw his helmet to the ground, rolled up his sleeves, and lunged at the shocked Nolan. Before anyone could react, he swung his fist and landed a solid punch on Nolan's face. "You idiot, try passing the blame on me again. Isn't it you who's always thinking about your cheating mistress and dragging us brothers out on calls every day?" Even after knocking him to the ground, he was still not appeased. He raised his foot to kick him in the chest, but was barely stopped. Still, he continued to curse. "Wasn't it you who confidently told me that my sister-in-law was just acting to compete for attention, telling me to ignore it? Now everything's come to light, and you know to divert attention. Are you treating me like a monkey?" The reporters watched in astonishment, their fingers hardly stopping on the camera shutters. Just as the scene was in chaos, the elevator dinged, and the doors opened. I appeared on the scene, my face pale. "Nolan, how dare you say you don't know anything?" I smiled coldly and raised my phone. The phone recording from when I was trapped in the elevator clearly reached the ears of everyone present. After Cole first refused to dispatch help, he specifically confirmed with you whether or not help was needed, and you refused me on the phone without hesitation. I took a deep breath, trying to make my voice resonate. For personal gain, you publicly have affairs and repeatedly refuse to change. For public affairs, you abuse your authority and waste police resources. I have already complained to various superior departments. You can forget about being a firefighter for the rest of your life. Just as my voice fell, an old police officer strode forward with handcuffs, grabbed his hand and cuffed him. Even the reporters, focused on getting the story, couldn't help but applaud. Just then, an unfamiliar doctor patted my shoulder and introduced himself. "Ms. Audrey, I'm your son's attending physician. My name is Mason." The child has been rescued and for now, we haven't found any serious after effects. After we observe him for another 48 hours, we can send him back to you." At that moment, tears finally streamed down my face. Wonderful. In this life, I finally protected my child.